setting up my webinar for YouTube. Okay, so let me share my screen. And again, this class is about legal descriptions and specifically how to get them, how to read them, and then how to pinpoint potential issues that are going to pop up inevitably on our projects, on our transactions. So first off, what is a legal description? Why do we need it? Why is it important? You all went to your real estate licensing and they said, in order to have a valid contract, you have to be able to identify the property. And what has been taught to people is that the way to identify property is to use a legal description. So why do we use legal descriptions? And is it, what is all this legalese? Well, addresses change all the time. The city can change them if a property is being redeveloped. They could change the address. I did a closing and I actually went over it again yesterday with the client who ended up buying it. But the owner, the former owner, had a loan against this property, and when they got the loan, it was called like 123 Seminole Road, and then they converted it, and the post office eventually changed the address, and they called it like 1480 Main Street. Like, it was a total change, and I couldn't tell the same. It's not like it was like an obvious change where they just changed the numbering, or it's a side street. They totally changed the street. So if we only relied on street addresses, eventually we would lose the ability to tell on some properties which house this is. And especially as cities are formed. So if we looked at, Atlanta 20 years ago, you might have a property in Atlanta and then it got incorporated into the city of Sandy Springs. Or maybe it got incorporated into the city of Brookhaven, or city of Alpharetta, something like that, or Roswell. Over the last 20, 30 years, there's been this power struggle between the cities and who owns it. So, for a while at least, you can use both addresses. So it could be, again, 123 Main Street, Atlanta, Georgia. You could use that, or you could also use 123 Main Street, Sandy Springs, Georgia. But if we look forward, if we go, 20 years in the future, you may not be able to refer to it as Atlanta anymore, Atlanta. So we can't use property addresses. You may see that sometimes on legal descriptions, which can be helpful to make sure to confirm that you have found the correct property, but it's not typically in the legal description. You're not normally going to see an address. Another thing you're not normally going to see is the acreage. You might see it sometimes. I would say maybe 10 to 20% of the time you'll see acreage. It is a little bit problematic to have acreage, because what happens if it's wrong? I think that's a very real possibility that the acreage could be misstated, not by a ton. Usually it's by a few tenths of an acre or something like that, but it could be a big deal when identifying a property. So we typically do not include acreage. And in fact, when I redraft a legal description, I omit the acreage. I take that out. I also take out the address, and I just deal with the actual meets and bounds. So let's think about, now we have our legal description. We know that there's no acreage. We know that there's no address. How do we read it? What are we going to see? Two types of legal descriptions. There's a short legal and a long legal. So more traditionally, if we go back hundreds of years, meets and bounds is what we're used to. That was the only thing that was available to us. And that's basically saying that you go this direction for this distance until you hit a point, and then you go a different direction at a different distance, you hit a point, and you have to connect. So you're going to do like a full square, triangle, rectangle, hexagon, whatever the shape of your property is. So let's look at an example. All that tract or parcel of land lying and being in land lot 223 of the 1st District, 2nd Section, Cobb County, Georgia. So we're setting up, we're saying, all right, we start big. We're in Georgia. All right, we know where Georgia is. Now we look at Cobb County. All right, we know where Cobb County is. That's still a pretty big area. And then we drill it down further and further. It's land lot 223, first district, second section. So we're basically starting with the whole United States, drilling it down to Georgia, drilling it down to county, drilling it to land lot, district, all that stuff. And now that we are pretty specific, let's find exactly where we're supposed to be. So starting at the point of beginning and running then south 88 degrees, 46 minutes, and 34 seconds east. Let me show you something. So if we look at a compass rose, you know, the coordinates, you know, 88 degrees, 46 minutes, 34 seconds. It's a little confusing, but let me try and simplify it for you. You have a compass, which is 360 degrees. And I hope you can, yeah, looks like you can kind of, it's just a circle. Well, on a compass, you've got 4 quadrants. You've got northeast, southeast, northwest, southwest. It's 360 degrees total. So these are each 90 degrees. So inside those 90 degrees, you have anywhere from 0 to 90, right? 91 to 180, 181 to 240, and so on and so forth. I think my math might be wrong. But you have your 90 degrees, right? Inside that, almost like very similar to a clock, you have minutes and you have seconds. So if you're 45 degrees, you're going to be splitting this exactly in the middle. And that's 45 degrees, 0 minutes, 0 seconds. And that is south 90 degrees, or south 45 degrees, 0 minutes, 0 seconds, east. That's what that coordinate is. We're saying we're going directly that direction. Well, in this scenario, it is 88 degrees. So it's all the way down here, near that 90 degree mark. It's 46 minutes, which means it's a little bit more, it's about halfway into 89 degrees. And 34 seconds, again, you know, a third of the way through that as well. So you're just basically, you're splitting hairs at this point, but it is southeast, which means we're down here. So this would be southeast, 88 degrees, 46 minutes, 34 seconds. South and east. So now you know how to do a Leo description, basically, right? You can read your coordinates just by thinking about this compass rose or thinking about the wristwatch, where you can say, all right, I know exactly where that is. On every survey, on every plat, it's going to have a compass. So you can follow the direction. And normally north is on the top of the page. So then south would be down. And so most surveys, 99.9% of surveys are going to show north facing to the top. So you can do your simple math there. Now, we're just going in that direction, but now we need to know a distance, meets and bounds, right? So distance of 100 feet to a point. So we're starting at the point of beginning, we're going 100 feet in this direction. Thence, which means, all right, now where are we going to go? South 0 degrees, which is basically this right here. West, which actually we're going the other direction. So south, actually, I think that might be straight down. A distance of 200 feet to a point, and then southeast, a distance of 100.2.58 feet to a point, then south 1 degree, 20 minutes, 10 seconds west, a distance of 175 feet to a point, the point of beginning. Larry, very good question. How do you know the location of the starting point? That is an excellent question. And Larry, you win the prize. If I could give you a kiss, I would. How do you know the point of beginning? It actually has to tell you. So this Leo description isn't correct. It needs to tell you your point of beginning. So this Leo description is incorrect. So not only now has Larry gotten the Leo description, he's read it, he's seen it's basically a square. It's 100 feet by 200 feet by 100 feet by 200 feet. So, you know, generally, we know it's basically a square. In Larry's mind, he's already thinking, yep, square, I've been to the property, that sounds about right. It's 100-foot frontage. Where's the point of beginning? How do I know I'm on the right lot? How do I know I'm in the right place, that I'm not at the neighbor's house or something like that? This Leo description is wrong. And so Larry, he may have just gone to a listing appointment at this seller's house, and they want him to take it on, or they're interviewing multiple agents, and he's like, I looked at your legal description. It's missing some information. I'm going to have my attorney look at it and redraft the legal so that we don't have any problems. Do you happen to have a survey? That's perfect. Or, don't worry if you don't have a survey. I'm going to do some research anyways. I'll talk to the attorney. I'll come back to you with a solution. Even if you don't use me, at least this won't be a problem for you. And that's what this class is meant to do, is that you're not just satisfying and, Kendra and saying, hey, we've checked the box, legal description attached. That's not the only job here, is that the correct legal description is attached. So good job by you, Larry. Everyone give you a hand. Now, over the last 30 years, as we've built subdivisions, the short legal description has emerged as kind of the preferred way to avoid issues just like what Larry pointed out. The issue is that you make a mistake, that the drafter, the person that drafted the legal description, made a mistake, did not reference the point of beginning, or maybe mistyped one of the coordinates or a distance. So we use a short legal, and instead of doing all the meets and bounds, we actually put those meets and bounds on a survey. And then we record that survey. And so on our deed, we just reference the survey, the plat, the recorded plat. So we say, hey, go to Cobb County, go to that same location, but reference the plat recorded in this book and page, and look to lot 9. That's the one we're selling. So let's look at the legal description that they have here. So all that tract or parcel of land lying and being in land lot 223 of the 1st District, 2nd Section, Cobb County, Georgia, being lot 9, Hyde Park subdivision, as per the plat recorded in Plat Book 130, page 65, Cobb County, Georgia. That's a lot easier. It's pretty easy to, one, verify that you have the right lot, because Larry went to this subdivision to do the listing appointment. Yeah, it's Hyde Park. Yeah, that's what the subdivision is. That sounds right. It's lot 9. Well, I don't know exactly which lot 9 is, but at least we know we're in the right subdivision, and my seller doesn't own anything else. This seems right. So if I'm going to keep moving, but if anyone could put in the chat what the next step would be to verify which lot, if it's the correct one, if we have the right legal description, do I have the right one? Let's say your seller has multiple lots. Let's say it's a builder. Maybe you're working for a builder, or you're making an offer on a new construction property, and they own the whole subdivision. How do we verify which lot it is? And if anyone could put that in the chat, I'll come back to you. So here is a copy of what is recorded at the county, and it's showing lot 9. And let's see if I can do some annotation there. Now, so I think you can see my mouse right now. So lot 10, 9, 8, 7, 5, 4, there are obviously going to be other lots on here, but we're looking at lot 9. Can anyone in the chat tell me what other descriptors are on here? What else is on here that we could use to identify the property? We're looking here, this is 100-foot frontage. It's about 200 feet distance in the back, 102 feet in the back, on the very back property line, and then 200 feet coming back to the point of beginning. This would probably be your point of beginning up here. Some other things that are on here, you've got a sanitary sewer easement. So depending on what the buyer's intentions are, maybe they could put a pool, maybe they couldn't, but there is a sewer easement in the back. We see lot 9 in the middle, that's the circle. This here, these 5500, the 5510, the 5490, can anyone tell me what that is? No one's answering in the comments. Come on, guys. Please tell me what you know of. Give me some answers, anything that you can answer. All right, we got someone, we got a taker. Let's see. I'm going to, here it is. All right, Larry says street numbers. You nailed it. You nailed it again. So yes, 5500 is the street number. One thing you're not noticing, because I cut off the picture, is that the name of the road is up here. So it says Conway Drive, 50-foot right of way or 45-foot right of way or something like that. So now we know, well, I went to the property address. I saw the mailbox. It's 5500 Conway Drive. And that's right here. So we can verify that. Verify, very good. So it is, it's 5500 Conway Drive. There's your lot number. So that, I basically answered this the first question for you. The way you verify that you have the right lot number is you go on the county website and you pull the plat and you say, all right, we've got it. Pam, you asked who wrote those numbers. The county did. So let's talk about how a plat goes through the process of this. Basically, one entity or one person owns this whole piece of property. Maybe it was 50 acres, let's say, and they want to develop it. They're going to subdivide it into 50 individual parcels. So the owner of the property goes to the county and says, hey, here's our 50 parcels. This is the zoning we need. Here are the easements. Here's the road. This is what we want to do. Here's some green space. Maybe there's amenities. Maybe we put a pool in or something like that. And then the county will sign off on it. When the county signs off on it, not only will zoning sign off on it, but permitting will sign off on it. Watershed, or like water management, which is like runoff and sewer and all that, they'll sign off on it. And then the tax assessor will sign off on it as well and issue tax IDs for every lot and addresses for every lot. So the county's adding those in after the fact. Everything else that's on here is drafted by the civil engineer who made the plat, who did all the engineering. And so you can see that is all, computer drawn. And then the county after the fact adds in the addresses, because that's not the developer's responsibility. They can't put in those addresses. So now if you get a legal description, if you're going to reach out to Campbell Brannon, or if you pull it for yourself, you know how to read them. You can at least tell me, is it a long legal or a short legal? Does it seem correct? One thing, if we look back at this long legal, one thing that you notice on the long legal is that, I'm going to try and annotate here. At the very end of this, the point of beginning is found on Conway Drive. So even if you don't know how to do the coordinates, or you forgot about this class, you know that we're kind of in the right area because that house is on Conway Drive. All right, point of beginning, Conway Drive. That sounds right. And then when we looked on the next one, Hyde Park subdivision, that sounds right. So you have these descriptors. You can at least, if you forget everything else, you can know the difference between the long legal and short legal, and you can look for those marked milestones or kind of points of reference. So it'll reference the intersection of two roads. It'll reference a subdivision name. It'll reference the county. Possibly it'll even reference neighboring landowners. And that's how they used to do legal descriptions. We'll get into that a little bit. But, you can at least think, if you're asking me for a legal description, I'm going to do it real quick. I got a lot of things going on. You ask me for a legal description, I send it. I'm not infallible. Sometimes I'll make a mistake. And so I want you to verify, hey, Christian, this is not in, Riverside subdivision. This one's in a different county, or this one's in a different subdivision. This is in Governor's Town Square or something like that. So you'll be able to pick that up real quick, as opposed to just saying thank you and putting it into your contract and it being wrong. So let's keep going down. So what you need to know, by reading the legal description, you should first determine if there's a long legal or short legal. B, if it's long, read it in comparison to a tax map or satellite picture of the property. I do this a lot. It may not be necessary all the time, but if it does it make sense? Does, at the very bottom, does it say that it's 1 acre? Or, if the shape is a little weird and we go on the tax assessor website, how does it compare? Does it look right? Let's do that right now. So let's see if I can change what I'm going to share here. Stop sharing. And I'm going to share instead my internet browser, and we're going to go to cobbassessor.org. Now, every county in Georgia has something similar to this. They might just have a different way of getting there. But this is the assessor's website. This is where I spend the majority of my time. And if you're lucky enough to be in Cobb County, this is an incredible website. In my opinion, it's probably one of the better ones in the state. So let's look up that property. It was 5500 Conway Drive. We go down here, sales information, click here. Guess what I have? I have a legal description. I have a whole warranty deed, and I didn't have to sign in or anything. And if you notice, that's my name. So I'm not trying to divulge any confidential information, but there's my legal description. All that tracker parcel land being in 223. There's our plat book. There's our page. It's lot 9, Hyde Park subdivision. So that's the legal description. If you're in Cobb, you never have to ask someone else to get your legal description. Sometimes you won't see it right away because it may be an old sale. Maybe if sent anything before 1990, it's probably not going to be on there, and we have to look at it a different way. You can also find permits on here, which is very helpful. You know, was it closed? If you're buying a property and you note that there's an open permit for a basement remodel, be careful. Ask the seller for verification that it was closed. That, you know, if it hasn't been closed, require that it be closed before closing. All those things, because you don't, as a buyer, you don't want to inherit an open permit issue. But if we go back up to the top and we click this map button, this is called I think it's called a Geospatial Informational Systems, GIS. Every county has this. So if you're in Fulton County, you can do Fulton County GIS, Forsyth County GIS, Gwinnett County GIS. The Cobb one is on the assessor website. And what's really cool about it is it's a combination of the tax map and a satellite image. So there's a house. There it is right there. That matches almost exactly what we have on the plat. So it's a square or a rectangle. It looks like it's 100 feet by 200 feet by 100 feet by 200 feet. I think we're cooking with oil at this point. You can zoom in, you can zoom out, you can look at when it was last sold, you can look at the zoning, it's R3. You know, so if you're trying to tear it down and build a commercial building on it or put a barn or something, you may not be able to use this zoning, you may have to get new zoning. So it's a really great resource for you guys. You can also add in subdivision maps. So this blue line is our subdivision. That technically I guess it's Hyde Park subdivision, but look, there are other ones. And so here's another subdivision. I think that's St. Leon or Lion or whatever it's called. And then if you go this way, I don't even know my own subdivisions, but I think this is Waterford Green and things like that. You can also do what we talked about before, which is, let's see, boundaries. There are districts, there are cities, Senate districts, voting districts, economic development. Let's see what that is. Enterprise zones, probably not going to see those around here. Parks and recreation. This is kind of a neat thing to have on here because there are a lot of parks in this area. So you'll see like Gold Branch, Chattahoochee River National Recreation Area. So, you know, you can have a client just looking around on this website. If you're not familiar with the area or they're not familiar with it, it's a really neat resource for you. So let's go back to the my handout. Okay, so you look at your long legal, it doesn't make sense. You compared it to the GPS map or the GIS map. Does it use GPS coordinates like the degrees, minutes, and seconds? You know, very specific. You know, if you notice on the legal description, it was like 102 point, what is it, 100 feet. This one was 200.01 feet, and this one was 102.58 feet. So is it really specific? It is. If it is, that's great. That means it's scientifically, we know exactly what our property lines are. as opposed to maybe an alternative legal description, which would be really vague, where it says go approximately 100 feet, go right, go along the property line 400 yards. Those legal descriptions I have a problem with, because you don't really know what you're buying, and the potential for an encroachment or other title issue is higher. So if you pull a legal description for a client, and you can probably identify these even before you pull the legal description. If you're in East Cobb, most of the area is subdivided. You're going to have plats. It's going to be very specific. It's built within the last 30, 40 years. But if we were in, say, Paulding County, or maybe we're down in Macon or something like that, you might not see plats. You might see a property that never was recorded for a survey or anything like that. And you might have really vague legal descriptions, in which case I would recommend a buyer get a new survey just to verify legal descriptions. Are the distances of the front of the property correct? If it references acreage or an address, is that correct? If it's not, let's fix it. For a short legal description, read it together with the recorded plat. So you go on the county website, you pull the recorded plat, you compare apples to apples, you make sure it all makes sense. Are we on the right property, the right lot? And this is especially true for new construction, because the builder has maybe 100 lots. You want to make sure you're buying the one that you're buying. You want it to be correct. And the acreage is on the plat. If someone could answer in the comments, what is not on the plat? The big thing as to what's not on the plat. If someone could answer that question, because if you ask me, I'm always going to tell you, get a survey, get a survey, get a survey. Well, if there's a recorded plat, why do we need a survey? What's the point? If someone can answer that in the questions, we'll come back to it. So this is when you need to ask more questions. If any of the answers to the above questions are not clear or they're incorrect, then you have to call an attorney and figure out how to fix it. That's the easy one. Hey, I did my research. It looks like the address is wrong. Can you help me figure that out? Maybe there were just 2 addresses. Maybe they updated it. Let's see if someone answered my question. Nope, no one's answered the question yet. Come on, guys. I want to see it. I want you to answer this one. All right, so is it possible also that you don't have the correct legal? I mentioned that earlier. So the plat may have changed. You might have an old plat, and now there's a new one. Susie raised her hand. Oh goodness, she asked a question. Fairway, you're right. Neighbor encroaching, any easements that may not be of record. That would be a good way to get a survey. Susie said the same thing, to get, to look for easements. It's actually much more obvious than that. What is the difference between a plat? Let's assume there are no encroachments potentially. Let's just say it's exactly what it was. What's the difference between a plat and a survey, other than the fact that the plat is recorded? Why would you get a new survey? Neighbor encroaching is not, it's not what I'm thinking. I'm thinking of something a lot more obvious. There's a house on the survey. There's no house on the plat. That's the big deal. So if we looked at the plat for Conway Drive here, you see no houses. There's no reference to the house. There's no reference to fences. There's no reference to pools. I think one of these houses does have a pool. I think it's off to the corner or something. So you'd get a survey to verify that the house was put in the right place, that was put within the building lines, the setback lines, things of that nature. So that's why you get a survey. You may also get a survey to verify that you can put new additions on. So maybe you're trying to verify that something in the future could be built there. So there are 2 ways you'd get a survey, and we actually are going to have a class on that in the future. But to verify that there are existing encroachments, no existing title issues. But 2, to verify that you could include or build any future additions to the property. You also, this is a big one, and there have been some really wild lawsuits about it. You may not be able to just pull the legal description from the county records. We might have to, the seller may have bought this vacant piece of land, then they did a plat, they subdivided it, the county approved it, and now they're selling off lots. You can't use the vesting deed, the legal description. We have to create a new one. Or if the builder owns 100 lots, you can't just use the legal description showing all 100 lots. You have to break it down to just being 1 lot. So in that scenario, you can take the format and you could actually create your own short legal description if you had a plat. It's really pretty easy. You pull all the information from the plat, put in your legal description. But honestly, I would reach out to an attorney and I would just make sure that they help you or verify it. Just, more eyes on it is probably better. Pam says also things may have changed since it was built. Survey is important. Yeah, you're 100% correct. So the big issue is that the survey shows where the house is in relation to the property lines. It's also going to show, let's say you had a 20-year-old survey that shows the house on it. Well, 20 years, there's a lot that may have happened. And maybe not even your property, but all the neighbors have been changing ownership. They maybe put in a fence or they put in a pool, things like that. We just want to verify. It's better to know now before we buy the house than afterwards when we've already paid the money for it. I had one other thing I wanted to show you. Speaking of surveys, let's see if it popped into my drive here. Yes, it did. All right, so let me share this with you. Stop sharing. And then I got to share my survey. So I told you that this was my house. Here's the survey. So I got a survey from McClung Surveying. I think Jeff McClung is one of the best. I know they're not the cheapest, but they do a great job. So this is my survey. This is not recorded of record. I paid for it. And they came out, they sent someone, a whole team of people actually with their survey equipment, and they basically have two pieces of equipment. The first one is a metal detector, and it tells where all the pins that are buried underground so they can find it. There's iron pins or like little rebar pins that they'll bury into the ground. And then they use their the thing that you're probably used to seeing, which is kind of like their laser or their distance marker, where they can go from one distance to another and know exactly how far it is, what coordinate it is, and whether anything is in the way. So encroachments. So when I pull this survey, first you have your legend off to the right here. Let's see if I can spotlight things. So here's our legend off to the corner here. It's showing who did my survey. They're certifying that it was done with certain technology or certain equipment. They referenced the deed where they pulled the property lines from. And they also reference the flood note. The property is not located in the federal flood zone as indicated by FIRM, Official Flood Hazard Maps. There's also going to be another class on flood zones, so we'll have that coming up. I love reading these survey notes. They're written there for a reason. I used to build subdivisions and I would ignore the notes, and that's where all the good stuff is. The good stuff isn't always on the actual drawing of the property. A lot of times it's in the notes. So let's look at the notes real quick. Storm sewer, sanitary sewer, and other buried utilities may not be paved, may have been paved or covered over. Location of them is an estimate, and you should call 811 for more information. If you are worried about whether there are easements in the backyard and your client refuses to get a survey, they can't afford it, or maybe they're just in their due diligence and they don't want to spend all this money on a survey, call 811. Call 811. Tell them that you want to verify any easements, any utilities that are running in the backyard, and they'll come out for free and mark it. They'll say there's a gas line. They'll say there's sewer line. They'll say there's water. They'll mark it right there. It washes off in a week or two. I had a closing where the survey showed an easement in the backyard, and they called it a general utility easement. And the seller claimed that there was nothing in there. There's nothing in there. There's nothing in there. It's just, and I said, well, you can't build a pool over an easement, especially one that has something in there. Maybe you could talk to the county if there's nothing, but it had, the best way to know is call 811, and they will send someone out to verify that there's nothing in there. I can't confirm that you would be able to get a permit from the county, but you might. Pam, yeah, It's great. 811 is awesome. If you ever build a fence, they're going to go through 811. You're going to call the fence company's going to call 811 and verify that they're not going to dig a trench where Comcast utilities are, or electrocute themselves or break a water meter or something. When you see those things on the news where they broke a big water meter, it's probably because they didn't do 811. The field data upon which this plat is being based was gathered by an open traverse, which I guess is the equipment that they use. Bearings showed were computed from angles. Let's see, all rebars set are 1/2-inch rebars, just like you'd buy at Home Depot. The existing size and location of impervious buffers, with like storm buffers or stream buffers, are subject to final determination. They're an estimate, so call the county. Flood information was determined from a certain area. The property lies within 2,000 feet of the Chattahoochee River corridor. Is subject to certain restrictions. For detailed information, contact the Atlanta Regional Commission. That's a big deal. That was note number 10. I'm ashamed to say I've never read that before. Luckily, I didn't want to really build anything on the house, but if I did, it's not that I'm subject to an HOA. Hyde Park isn't like an active HOA, so it's nothing I have to worry about in that regard. But maybe if I wanted to build an extension or something on the back of the house, I might have to get Atlanta Regional Commission approval. Man, my mind is blown. So, hey, there we go. Read your survey. So now that we have our survey, this is how you read it. This is your point of beginning. So Larry mentioned earlier, where's the point of beginning? They actually reference it, 533.7 feet to the northeast right-of-way of Hyde Road. So that's northeast right-of-way of Hyde Road and Conway. That's your point of beginning. Come 533.7 feet to a rebar found. You see it right here, a rebar found. And then south, 46 or 88 degrees, 46 minutes, 34 seconds east, 100 feet to an 1/8-inch rebar found. And then come on down southwest, 200.101 feet to another 1/2-inch rebar found. And then we go another 102 feet, and then we go 200 feet up along there. Neighbor's wood fence clears property line. So that's not an issue. I don't really worry too much about fences anyways. There's some wood walls that they've referenced. Here's that sewer easement that we saw on the plat. So the surveyor is noting it there. They showed that there was a sewer vent that's basically on the neighboring property, but they're trying to show it. This is why I think McClung is one of the best, because they go a little bit beyond. They'll go and look at the neighboring stuff, anything that could affect you or be helpful to you. They're going to put it on the plat, whether it's on your property or not. And then they have a description of the house. We're always going to look at the driveway. If this driveway was over the property line, that'd be a problem, obviously. It has a walkway, it has the house, all that stuff. It also will show this 9, which was the lot number. So, and we've got that. It's showing Conway Road, 50-foot right-of-way, which we would have seen on the plat if I showed you the full thing. So, and then the last thing actually is the 35-foot building lines. You can't build a house within 35 feet of the right-of-way, which is very helpful. Now, the thing that's changed since I bought this house is I put in a fence. So if a new buyer were to come along, I could give them this survey, but it's not going to show where the fence was in relation to it. And that would be up to the buyer as to whether that's a risk to them or if they're okay with the way it is. When they built the fence, they did call 811 and they came out and they verified what utilities were in the right-of-way. And we kind of went from there. But I hope that was helpful to you. There's a lot of things on here that I think is great. What they're noting down here, the total area plus or minus just under a 1/2 acre or 20,000 square feet. It has an address, and then on the very bottom here, see if I can move it over. You've got your landlocked, your district, your section, Cobb County, Georgia, plat prepared date, all that stuff. And this is the plat book 130, page 65. So if you notice something that was wrong on here, you might look at this plat book and page that they pulled the information from and say, like, wait a second, they're not using the newest plat, or they're using an old one, something like that. And you could actually get your survey corrected. So just like an appraiser can make mistakes and may be willing to update it or change it based on your feedback, I do this a lot of times too. If I see something like that doesn't that doesn't match what's on the tax map. It doesn't match what the seller knows to be their property. What's going on here? And we could look at the plat book and page. I hope that was helpful. You know, I think this is a really, really important topic. It's not that difficult, but it does take reps. You know, one of the benefits of being in my job is that I get to see legal descriptions, you know, 100 times a day, and people are asking me the questions about them. So I really have to get into the details, and you can too. You may not have as many reps. It may take you some time to get into it, but it's really not that difficult to get comfortable with it. And just knowing, you know, just again as a summary, is it a short legal or a long legal? Can I find any sign of markers or reference points that make sense to me? You know, the Conway Drive thing, the subdivision name, you know, the county where it's recorded. Let's verify it then to the plat. Let's verify it compared to the survey. So we're showing pretty much everything is adding up, except that long legal that Larry mentioned that is missing a point of beginning. So if you only had a long legal, we'd probably have to fix it. We'd ask the seller for a survey, or we'd go back in prior deeds and verify it. Honestly, the missing of the point of beginning is because I missed it, right? So if I can miss it on my presentation to you guys, I can miss it on a closing, or another attorney could easily miss it. We're not perfect, right? So we verify, trust but verify, go through the process. If you have questions, have a second set of eyes, call me directly, and we kind of go from there. I hope that was helpful. I think it was. This is a really cool class. Again, it's going to be recorded on YouTube. So you just search Christian Ross Down and Dirty. You'll find my channel. I've got maybe 10 things on there at this point. And my hope is that by the end of the year, I'll have 20. I think we're taking a break next week. So bear with me as we, you know, it'll be 2 weeks before we do this again, just because the last week of the month is always a difficult one for me to schedule these. But we'll get back on it next week, and you'll get invited to that. And I'm excited to have you back. So thanks again, everybody. And call me if you need me. Call me if you need me.